Have you ever faced a challenge so big that it seemed impossible to overcome? Meet Rayhan, a young boy from a small village who dreamed of changing his life. But there was one thing holding him back: his ability to speak English. Watch how Rayhan rises above his fears, conquers his doubts, and unlocks his potential. This story isn't just about dreaming big, it's about the power of persistence and the courage to keep going, no matter the obstacles. Along the way, you'll also learn valuable English lessons through Rayhan's journey, helping you unlock your own greatness. Stay tuned and let's rise and conquer together. This hook invites viewers to not only engage with the story, but also learn English through Rayhan's journey. Rayhan stood at the edge of the small village, looking at the distant city skyline. Ever since he was a child, he had dreamed of something bigger, something greater than the quiet life his family had always known. But there was one problem: he could barely speak English. And without English, the doors to success remained tightly shut. One evening, while helping his father in the rice fields, Rayhan met an old traveler named Mr. Harris. The man had been to many countries and spoke many languages. Seeing the curiosity in Rayhan's eyes, he asked, "What do you want to do with your life, young man?" "I want to learn English," Rayhan struggled to say. Mr. Harris smiled. "Then you must rise and conquer. Do you know what that means?" Rayhan shook his head. "It means to stand up, face your fears, and overcome them. If you want to learn English, you must practice every day, no matter how hard it is." Rayhan nodded. From that day, he made a promise to himself he would learn English and change his life. The journey was not easy. At first, he could only memorize a few words. He wrote them down in a small notebook and practiced them every night. "Hello, my name is Rayhan. How are you? I want to learn English." He repeated these sentences to himself over and over. One day, he found an old radio at the village market. It was broken, but he saved money to fix it. When it finally worked, he listened to English programs for hours, even though he barely understood anything. He wrote down words he heard and asked Mr. Harris to explain them. Slowly, his vocabulary grew. Months passed, and Rayhan became braver. He started speaking with tourists who visited the village. At first, he made mistakes, but he never gave up. He laughed at his errors and learned from them. His confidence grew, and so did his English skills. Then came the biggest challenge. A university in the city was offering scholarships, but the application had to be in English. Rayhan felt nervous. Could he write an entire essay in English? Could he express his dreams in a language he had just begun to master? He sat down with his notebook and wrote his story, the story of a boy from a small village who dared to dream. He used every word he had learned, every sentence he had practiced. When he finished, he handed the application to Mr. Harris, who smiled as he read it. "You have risen, Rayhan," he said. "Now, it's time to conquer." But Rayhan's journey was far from over. Weeks passed, and Rayhan eagerly waited for a response from the university. Every day, he checked the mailbox, hoping to see an envelope with his name on it. But nothing came. Doubts started creeping into his mind. Had he made too many mistakes? Was his English not good enough? One evening, as he sat by the river, Mr. Harris joined him. "You look troubled, Rayhan," he said. "I don't know if I will ever succeed," Rayhan admitted. "What if my English is not good enough?" Mr. Harris chuckled. "Success is not about never failing, my boy. It's about never giving up." Rayhan nodded, taking a deep breath. He knew he had to keep going, no matter what. Then, one morning, a letter finally arrived. With shaking hands, Rayhan tore it open. His eyes widened as he read the words he had been invited for an interview. But there was one problem. The interview would be in English. Fear gripped him. Speaking with tourists was one thing, but an official interview, that was completely different. Still, he refused to let fear hold him back. For the next 2 weeks, he practiced endlessly. Mr. Harris helped him prepare, asking him questions, correcting his grammar, and teaching him new phrases. Rayhan repeated sentences again and again until they felt natural. The day of the interview arrived. Rayhan traveled to the city, feeling like a small fish in a vast ocean. Tall buildings surrounded him, cars rushed past, and the air buzzed with unfamiliar voices. As he entered the university building, his heart pounded. He took a deep breath and reminded himself, "Rise and conquer." He stepped into the interview room, where 3 professors sat waiting. One of them smiled. "Welcome, Rayhan. Please introduce yourself." Rayhan took a deep breath. "Hello, my name is Rayhan," he began, his voice steady. "I come from a small village, but I have big dreams. Have you ever faced a challenge so big that it seemed impossible to overcome? Meet Rayhan, a young boy from a small village who dreamed of changing his life. But there was one thing holding him back: his ability to speak English. Watch how Rayhan rises above his fears, conquers his doubts, and unlocks his potential. This story isn't just about dreaming big, it's about the power of persistence and the courage to keep going, no matter the obstacles. Along the way, you'll also learn valuable English lessons through Rayhan's journey, helping you unlock your own greatness. Stay tuned and let's rise and conquer together. This hook invites viewers to not only engage with the story, but also learn English through Rayhan's journey. The professors listened carefully as Rayhan spoke about his journey, his struggles, and his determination to learn English. One of them nodded approvingly. "You have worked very hard," she said. "Why do you want to study here?" Rayhan hesitated for only a moment before answering. "Because I believe education can change my life. I want to learn, grow, and one day help others like me." The interview continued, and Rayhan answered each question with the best English he could manage. He made mistakes, but he did not let them stop him. He stayed confident and determined. When the interview ended, the professors smiled. "Thank you, Rayhan. We will contact you soon." Rayhan left the room feeling both nervous and hopeful. He had done his best. Now, all he could do was wait. Days turned into weeks, and Rayhan continued his routine. He practiced English, helped his family, and waited for the university's decision. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. His hands trembled as he opened it. A moment later, tears filled his eyes, tears of joy. He had been accepted. "Mr. Harris beamed with pride. "You did it, Rayhan. You have conquered your fears and unlocked your greatness." Rayhan smiled. He had taken the first step, but he knew this was only the beginning of a new adventure. Rayhan's heart raced as he held the letter in his hands. It was official. He had been accepted into the university. He had overcome countless challenges, and now his dream was becoming a reality. His journey had been long and difficult, but he had proven to himself that with determination, anything was possible. Mr. Harris smiled proudly as he saw Rayhan holding the acceptance letter. "You did it, my boy," he said, patting him on the back. "You faced your fears, you rose, and you conquered." Rayhan nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment that words couldn't fully express. The boy who once struggled to speak English now stood on the verge of a new chapter in his life. He had unlocked the door to education, to new opportunities, and to a future he had always dreamed of. As Rayhan prepared to leave for the city, he thought back to the lessons Mr. Harris had taught him. Success wasn't about being perfect, it was about persistence, courage, and the will to never give up. No matter how difficult the path, he knew now that anything was possible if he kept rising and conquering. When he arrived at the university, Rayhan was overwhelmed by the vast campus, the modern buildings, and the bustling students. But he was no longer afraid. He had faced the hardest challenge of all, believing in himself, and now he was ready for anything. Rayhan took his first steps onto the campus with confidence, ready to continue his journey. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he was no longer just a boy from a small village. He was someone who had risen, conquered, and unleashed his inner greatness. And this was only the beginning.